forward into the election.
On the issue of immigration, Senator Cornyn, the president signed a $600 million border security bill this week, adding resources to the southern border. Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano was asked, is this enough? Here's what she said.
Do you think this is enough, or is more needed to do the job that you think needs to be done?
I think this is what we asked for, and of course what we asked for is what we thought would be enough.
So the question is it enough?
Well, it's not enough to stop our the lack of security along the southern border. It's a step in the right direction, and I'm glad the administration has come around to support more boots on the ground, more UAVs, technology. But last year there were 540,000 people roughly detained coming across the border illegally. 45,000 of them came from countries other than Mexico, demonstrating the fact that Mexico itself now is a pathway into the United States from people all around the world, and we don't know what their intentions are. So this remains a very serious national security problem, and I think until we do actually secure the border, until we do actually enforce our current law, I don't think the American people are going to have confidence in the federal government.
What about this issue election-wise with the midterm for Democrats, Senator Reid?
Well, I think the fact that together, on a bipartisan basis, we were able to approve these funds to strengthen the border is a very, very good sign. The President has taken significant steps over the course of the last 18 months to strengthen our protection at the borders. That's part of our, and must be a major part of our immigration policy. The fact that we're deploying technology as well as additional about 1,500 agents along the border shows that we're very serious. And we have to, if we have to do more, we should do more. And that, I believe, is the view of the President.
You're on the Senate Armed Services Committee on Afghanistan, Senator Reid. David Petraeus, the general on the ground, now says that this about the Afghanistan drawdown in July 2011. Quote, this is a date where the process begins that is conditions-based, and as the conditions permit, we transition tasks to our Afghan counterparts and the security forces in various governmental institutions, and that enables a, quote, responsible drawdown of our forces. The situation on the ground drives it. Do you see any distinction or difference in that statement and what the administration has been saying about July 2011?
No, I don't, and one reason is because General Petraeus was intimately engaged in the planning for the strategy the President announced at West Point last year. He was the CENTCOM commander. He was involved in the conversations along with General McChrystal and the whole national security team. And that is the view on the ground, and that's the view here in Washington, that next July, based on conditions, we will begin to shift missions and resources in Afghanistan. We hope more and more to the Afghani national forces. Ultimately, those are the forces that are going to win the battle and stabilize their country.
Vice President Biden was quoted in Jonathan Alter's book as saying, in July 2011, you're going to see a whole lot of people moving out. Bet on it. And then he repeated, bet on it. You think that's inaccurate?
I don't think it's inaccurate. I believe that you'll see people moving out, missions changing, but I don't sense immediately a dramatic pell-mell withdrawal. I think you'll see a change based on conditions. We have 18 months. We've got a battle coming up in Kandahar, which will be critical. The most critical factor, though, is the ability of the Afghan National Army to step up to their tasks. They've showed mixed results so far, but the good news is that they seem to be trying much more aggressively now than they were a year ago, and that probably is in some part related to the fact that there now is a point in time where they know they're going to have to step up to the plate.
Senator Cornyn, politics. Democratic Party Chairman Tim Kaine said of Republicans last week running in November, quote, the Tea Party takeover of the Republican Party is really producing millstones for them. He pointed to Sharon Angle, the candidate in Nevada, and Ken Buck in Colorado, saying they are, quote, wacky with ideas about the role of government that are way outside of the mainstream, that are just going to be offensive to people. Your response?
Well, I think what the American people are sensing, and the reason why they're voting in such large numbers, 65,000, 68,000, I think it was, more people voted in the Republican primary in Colorado than in the Democratic primary, is because they think that what's happening in Washington is out of the mainstream. 9.5% unemployment, spending, unsustainable debt, failure to deal like adults with real problems in an adult-like fashion. Look, I think, you know, these races are going to be decided based on how people feel about the economy, how they feel about spending and debt. In Nevada, for example, 14.2% unemployment. 70% of the home mortgages are underwater. If you like the way things are going in Nevada, I suppose that people will vote for Harry Reid. If they don't, then I think they have a good alternative in Sharon Angle.
So the fact that 6 candidates that you all supported lost in the primaries, you don't see that as a negative for the party?
Well, we support the nominee and respect the right of the primary voters to make that selection. I suppose the Democrats in Florida with Kendrick Meek and Jeff Green running in a spirited primary down there, and in South Carolina with Al Green, who's now been indicted on obscenity charges, who's running against Jim DeMint. I mean, these sorts of things happen in the context of politics, but the American people will be able to render their verdict on November the 2nd.
You bring that race up. Senator Reid, should Alvin Green step aside in South Carolina?
That's a decision he'll have to weigh. Again, I think what John has talked about is a very, very difficult primary season for both parties, frankly, because people are very upset. They're very frustrated. They see economic opportunities that they took for granted now evaporating before them. And so this is a very unpredictable season. I think the campaigns will come down really to the individual candidates, now that the primaries are sorting them out, and their skill at communicating to the public what they want to do and how effectively they can work here in Washington.
Chairman Kaine says the millstone for Republicans are these candidates for the Tea Party. Republicans charge that President Obama may be a millstone with his approval ratings in the mid-40s for some Democratic candidates, especially in moderate districts and moderate states. Do you think that many candidates will want President Obama to campaign in their districts?
I think the president will be campaigning. I know the president will be campaigning throughout the country. He'll be campaigning in many, many districts. I think his ability to talk about what his administration has accomplished in terms of health reform, in terms of stabilizing a terrible situation. Now, recall, when he became president, we were losing 790,000 jobs a month. The Bush administration had taken a surplus and turned it into a deficit. He dealt with those problems, still dealing with those problems. So I think he will be out there and making the case that we have to go forward. To go back to the Bush policies would be a disaster for the country. And many candidates will be wanting that message.
2 quick lightning round questions here. Senator Cornyn, looking at the landscape now, how many Senate seats do you believe your side can pick up? Do you think that you can take control of the Senate, how it's shaping up right now?
If everything goes our way on November the 2nd, I could see a plausible pathway there, but realistically, I think it's going to be a 2-cycle effort, but we're going to try to get as many Republicans, because we think that'll force President Obama to the middle. For example, when President Clinton had a Republican Congress, and we think that would be a good thing for the country, forcing things back toward the middle instead of the extreme policies that we've seen coming out of Washington.
Senator Reid, there's a report that Vicki Kennedy is being encouraged to run against Republican Scott Brown in 2012 in Massachusetts. Will you add your name to the list encouraging her?
I think she's a tremendously talented person. She certainly has been involved in the public life of Massachusetts and here in Washington for many, many years with her husband, Ted. As I said before, I haven't talked anybody into a race or out of a race in my entire history, and I'm not going to start now.
Senator Reid, Senator Cornyn, thank you much for being here.
Thank you.